Well, I'm Kelechi Okafor, and I made sure to say it properly there, not the way that I usually say
I know.
it. And I'm an actor, director, podcaster, and writer, but just all round baby girl, really, because I do other things
You
outside
do
of that. I'm creator of
most
Sally in
other things.
HR, just bits.
Brilliant. Okay, so based on this, I'm going to be asking you a series of questions around the Nigeria 60 project that I'm doing for the Horniman. And the first question that I'd like to ask you is, where were you in the 1960s? In
I
1960s
was
specifically.
nowhere. I was nowhere to be found. I was born in 1986, so I was nowhere to be found.
Okay.
But even my mum, I think that my mum was born 3 years into the 60s. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so
So, but
that's when we were
was
even just
she
arriving.
was she born in Nigeria?
Yeah. My mum was born in Lagos.
Okay, fantastic. So, and then were you born in, okay, so your parents' relationship with Nigeria, from your name, you
Hmm.
know, are you Igbo, are you Yoruba, are you Hausa? Because we know that names in Nigeria come from different parts
They
of Nigeria.
yeah. So
So,
my name is Ibo, or the name that people know me as,
mhm,
like in my first and surname, is Ibo. So because my
mhm,
dad was Ibo,
mhm.
and my mum's Yoruba.
Okay.
So yeah, and I've always thought that found that tension really interesting. That union
Mm.
and the tension that came with it, based on the Biafra War and
Of
everything
course.
else.
Yeah.
I've always found that very interesting, that they were together, and what that would mean. But yeah, that's how I came about. And they both were born and grew up in Nigeria. My dad is from Imo State,
Mm.
Owerri, and
Okay.
he had moved to Lagos when he was very young. And so
Mm.
him and his brothers, they kind of, or and his siblings, they grew up in Lagos. So my dad spoke Yoruba fluently. I didn't ever know him really to speak Igbo. Well, in
Igbo.
the short time that I was in
Okay.
Nigeria, he
Okay.
didn't ever really speak Igbo
Okay.
to me or around me.
Okay, understood. So the funny thing is, for me, like, I'm part Fulani, part Yoruba. My mother was
Hmm.
half Fulani, half Yoruba, and my father was
Wow.
full Yoruba. So, like, the funny thing is, every so often I come across people who are homogeneous mix, Jesus.
Yeah.
Anyway, of
Can you
different
walk?
parts of Nigeria.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find that there's a beauty in that, because when you look at our history, it's never straightforward, and to
Mm-mm.
find love in a contentious place is actually
Mm.
amazing. When did you first hear or know or feel that you were a Nigerian in your lifespan?
Um, I've always known. I feel like that is the one thing that I felt like I'd always known. Obviously, that's changed through the years. So,
Mm.
being born in Nigeria, I came to England when I was about like 5 and going on 6. So I got to England not really. I feel like I was smarter when I was in Nigeria. Like my mum, like before my mum sent for me to come over to England,
Yeah.
I knew all of my states and capital, states and capital. Like I knew all of that.
Capita, capita, capita. There's actually a song.
So I knew all of these things, and I knew maths on the next level, and I was only 5. But then I got here, and it's like it really kind of slowed me down. Like it really, I don't think it really pushed me, or my horizons were expanded in terms of the curriculum in that way. So, but I'd always remembered that I was Nigerian. I remember when I'd first really arrived, and I'd started school, and I said something like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and see my auntie." And then one girl was like, black girl as well. I think she
Mm.
was from, I want to say Jamaica. Well, her family's from Jamaica. And she said, "It's not auntie, it's auntie." So I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry." Like, it was so kind of like different for me. And And I would speak Yoruba all of the time. Like that is all I ever spoke. Like I spoke Yoruba all of the time. And when I was in school, then I would be trying to speak, you know, my version of English or whatever. And I remember one day being in the car with my stepdad, and my stepdad was just like, stop speaking Yoruba, you're in England now, like speak English. And from then it just, you know, that was it. Like that's where
that was the switch.
Stopped. That was the switch. And then from then I was like, if you, even as like my 6-year-old, whatever, 7-year-old self by that point, I was like, if you want me to speak, I was speaking and speaking that
all
English.
The English.
Even the Queen can't chat for me. Watch. So, you know, that switch happened, and it's now very funny where people are like, oh, you don't speak Yoruba, like you don't speak it. I know that you can, you know, you write it and you drop it in here and there, but I don't hear you like actively speak Yoruba. And, you know, my stepdad will say this and family members will say this. And I was thinking, are you all right? Because you were the same
ones. You're the one who told me.
You told me to assimilate aggressively into this culture.
Yeah.
And that's what I did, very much aware that I don't feel particularly British. Yeah. But you told me that I couldn't be all of my Nigerian. So now I'm existing in this sort of space where I don't feel like I'm too much of either. Like I'll go to Nigeria and they'll be like, this one, Ajebota, like they don't, you know, they don't see it for me. They don't have my time at all. And I realized, you know, having grown up here now that I'm 33, having grown up here, I'm now seeing how I take some British attitudes over to there. And I have to check myself, like, because you can't go and taking this colonial mentality back there and think, oh, by virtue of me being from Nigeria, then I can come and do this and wield this privilege. So yeah, those are the kind of things, those are the things that I noticed, the conflicts that I noticed with all of this.
You know, the funny thing is, like, I had almost an opposite but kind of similar paradigm. Like we left here, my sister and I, because the rest of our siblings were here. So the last two went back to Nigeria. And the funny thing is, because there are 5 of us, well, there were 5 of us, there are only 4 now. The first 3 came here, and we were born here, as in my sister and I. And then we went back to Nigeria when I was like maybe 7, 8. The first time I actually went back to Nigeria was when I was like 5 with my dad, and we actually sailed back to Nigeria as opposed to.
Wow.
Yeah, like because I actually have like some memories of like, you know, the actual trip sailing back to Nigeria. And I was like, I'm sure I've been sailing before. Then I'll see a photograph of me when I'm a kid. And I'm like, oh my Lord.
Wow.
You know? But the thing is, when we moved back to Nigeria, as I said, it was like, maybe I was about 7, 8 or something like that. And going to school, they had this whole thing about, it was during my early secondary years, they were like, no vernacular speaking.
Wow.
And you're like, what do you mean no vernacular speaking? You're not allowed to speak your own indigenous language. So Yoruba, whilst you were in class. You could speak it when you were like on the playground or during lunch break, but you couldn't speak it in class. And that wasn't just Yoruba. That was like Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa.
Any of the language,
couldn't speak any language. And the thing is, because I was fortunate, my parents used to speak Yoruba to me at home. My mom used to speak a little Hausa and a little Fulani to me at home. But it was always amazing seeing my mom just like switch. The code switching was amazing, and it was just so beautiful and fluid. And I was always fascinated by the fact that our language existed. But then, you know, it was only existing in certain spaces because you're not allowed to have these conversations. So I remember at one point, I was so determined to learn Yoruba. I learned to speak and I learned to write it. And actually, I'm so proud to say this, I got an A3 in Yoruba in my GCEs when I did them back in Nigeria. And I was like, if we go Yoruba, kiniko. And then you now find another person that speaks a different level of Yoruba to you. You're like, well, I'm a Yoruba, but you know,
but this is another level.
This is
because when you go to Ekiti and you go to them places and they hit you with the actual Yoruba. And I'm like, Mommy, can you come and translate? Can you come and break this down? Because clearly what I understand is Lekki Yoruba. Can you come and break down what I just heard here? It's wild.
When I used to go back home to my grandma's, because my father was from Oderemo, my mother is from Shagamu. when I'd go back and I'd see my grandma, my father was an orphan, so I never got to meet my, grandparents on his side, my paternal grandparents. But when I would go back to Shagama and I would speak to my, what's it called? Because I'm trying to remember the name of the dialect of Yoruba that they speak, which quite frankly, you need to open your ears. Because they're saying the same thing, but there's a different intonation, inflection, in certain words, and then you actually then realize that we're a lot more diverse and complex, but similar at the same time. It was.
But this is what pisses me off. This is what pisses me off about the whole thing, and this is why I hate colonizers with all of my heart, because our history was interrupted, and then after the interruption, it was then reduced to what?
Exactly.
Chinua Achebe spoke about it. I can't remember which book of his that I was reading, and it was just very, very interesting to me how we have these languages. People talk about us as if we're tribes. Tribes is diminutive.
We're nations.
Tribes. Right. Literally different nations of people. Completely different nations of people. Backgrounds, cultures, heritages. Like, it's so different. And then you just came with a stupid ruler and we're like, okay, well, we're just going to cut this up here and you're just going to be, and you sliced through entire lineages, entire histories, pushed everyone. This like forced amalgamation of people and histories into one, and you're wondering why there's conflict. You're wondering why there's conflict. Like, that is extremely wild to me. And yes, English is what kind of unifies us. Like, we all have that collective language to speak within Nigeria. But as radical as it might sound, I would say, like, drop it. Like, can people just not go back to doing what they were doing? Like, retrace the steps and find their spaces again, because through this forced amalgamation of like people and histories, there's so much resentment and there's so much like erasure of marginalized groups or groups that are seen within Nigeria to not have as much socioeconomic or political power that it's just frustrating. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Maybe we've moved too far with all of this to be able to take everything apart again. But there has to be something. There has to be some kind of restitution. There has to be something that allows for people to find their way back to themselves. We look at the African diaspora, and we're talking about African Americans and people of in Brazil and the Americas at large and the Caribbean about finding their way home. But even us that are in the perceived home, of the perceived home, where do we sit in all of this? Because Britain came and smashed all of that to pieces.
Yeah. And it's amazing when you think about it, because it was all based around trade.
Yes.
It was all based around trade. And I think
capitalism from early.
Well, and the funny thing is, trade is not a foreign concept to us as Nigerians, but it became more about competition in a different way because of colonization. But, we are where we are at the moment, and there's a lot of conversations that we need to be having in order to, retrace our own lineage and understand who we are as individuals and as the collective that we come to see ourselves to be. I personally don't necessarily agree with a lot of people out there who are saying, just go back to being separate.
You can't.
You can't now, because it's just been far too long. We're talking, you went from being the northern and southern protectorates, and then from different, and prior to that, you went from being different empires and different nations, the Benin Empire, the Yoruba Empire, you just look at it and you think, over these years, now you want us to revert. How are we going to revert?
We can't find our way back. We can only find our way forward, but we still do need to retrace steps. Like when one of the biggest things that I've done this year, and it might seem really random to some people or trivial, but I found my name in the original text of Nsibidi, like
yeah,
of you know, the Igbo people, and you know,
no,
and I was able to and I was able to find that, and it was heartbreaking to see what my name should look like to see that,
yeah,
and to understand that that we had a language, we had this before all of these they came with their alphabets and all of that, we had this,
we had our own
and so
lexicon.
right, and there's a beauty in it. I was staring at my name for ages, especially the chi part of Kelechi. I was staring at the chi part for ages, and what, in terms of symbology, what it reflected to me, where the crown was placed on top of this thing that looked like a Sankofa bird. Like, it's so interesting. At the same time, it looks like a throne as well, just that chi bit, and that being a representation of the God force. That was really, really interesting to me. So I decided to get a tattoo of it, because to me, it's about reclaiming history, but knowing that there was only so far we can go back, because they burnt all the, you know, all of the things that would allow us to have an accurate kind of recollection of everything. Yeah. So we can only take what we have and move forward with that. And that's what I'm saying, like, in terms of, oh, let's all separate. It's controversial. It's not something I think that we can do, because we've gone too far one way, but there has to be something that we do that kind of redistributes power in a way that is not currently being shown within Nigeria.
I couldn't agree with you more. And based off the back of that, my next question is, like, what impresses you about Nigeria?
I'm impressed by Nigeria because even with all of the violence that we have endured
and continue to
the erasure of our histories that we have witnessed, there is still this just palpable brilliance that we bring to the world. Like, when I look at the diaspora, when I look at, when we trace it back, where the roots of all of these brilliant things that are being done by the African diaspora, when I look at that and I think, like, Nigeria is really where it's at. Like, when we look at the culture and take it all the way back, we still come back to Nigeria. So our spirit managed to live on through, and still lives on through, all of the things that we do throughout the world. And we are so impactful on the world as a whole.
Definitely.
Don't get our juice for it, because everyone was, oh, they're so arrogant. They're this, like, why wouldn't we be arrogant? We gave you all of the things. You know? So yes, we're going to feel ourselves, because, you know, like Audre Lorde says in Litany for Survival, we were never meant to survive. You know, we weren't, not with this magnitude of spirit. We weren't meant to, but we did. And that is something to celebrate.
100%. 100%. Like, I could not put that in any better way than you just did. Like, I 100% agree with you, because when people look at Nigerians, mainly, this person is, they're loud, they're what's it called, they're this, any way that you can use to try and marginalize us, disperse us, give us what's it called. I'm not saying we don't have our problems. We have our problems.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
So does everybody else. So, you know, that whole narrative of look over there, look over there, I said look over there, as opposed to actually, what's it called, focusing on the same thing that you're talking about. So half the time I'm listening to people when they're talking, I'm just like, whatever. You can say whatever you want to say. I know that we are great. You know?
Yeah, we are.
Based off that, I keep on, one of the questions that keeps on reoccurring in my mind is like, what would you like to, or wish to change about Nigeria?
The government. I would really want to uproot the whole thing. It's the same thing I think about the global West. Everything is it's an uprooting of the very foundation of what we know to be authority and what we know to be governance, because it's rotten at its core. So there's nothing that you can really do to build upon it, because nothing will be stable if the foundation is rotten. And the foundation is rotten because when we go back again and we look at how you know, Nigeria's independent of who, of what, because you're still there pulling the puppet strings all of the time. You're still there because economy is the major influence, and you're still there economically. You've got a massive influence economically, so you never really left. You never really left. But what you did is put people in the place to appear to look like us, but still very much serving your deeds and doing your bidding. Yeah. So we have to go to the colonial rotten core of everything. Extrapolate that, excavate that, and then put something else in its place that would actually serve the people of Nigeria. How is it that Nigeria is so wealthy in terms of resources in so many aspects, yet the rate of poverty is abysmal? Like, people are dying unnecessarily. Like, the roads are, nonsensical. The education system leaves a lot to be desired. Like, there are things that we can put in place that serve the people. There is definitely a way to do this in terms of even healthcare and logistics, transport, so many things, yet people are coming to it saying that they want to be the change, but you can't really change a system that is rotten in every way possible.
Last time I was in Nigeria was in 2017. And every time I go back, and I go back fairly frequently, I'm always amazed of the progress, but I'm still quite upset and reticent of the fact that there's a lot of stagnation.
But it's even what do we call progress? This is what really upsets me, because when we look at it from our lens as well, we're looking at progress in a sense that we're starting to reflect and resemble the Western world, because in terms of convenience and in terms of these things. And the progress I'd like to see is that, Black women, Nigerian women aren't having to sleep with lecturers to get their grades, aren't being, I'd like to see those things. I'd like to see them address the abuse, the sexual abuse, for instance, that the house help, often face, whether the house girl, house boy, all of that, like the abuse across the board that they face. Like, I know that steps are being made in these fields, but we could definitely move faster. We could definitely be doing more. Like, I'm so happy for everybody that they've got high rises and skyscrapers and ATMs, and everyone's feeling fancy and doing all of that stuff. But I just think that those are very capitalist aspirations that mean that somebody else has to be oppressed for us to have those things. And I think that there is a different way that it can work. Like, even historically, we had more matriarchal systems, and what we're seeing people perpetuating is a toxic, like, kind of patriarchal system that nobody wants to sit down and question. That is disproportionately violent towards women in Nigeria. So it's what do we want of Nigeria?
Well, I'm not going to disagree with anything that you've said, because that's the lens a lot of people look at it. When I say some of the progress that I see, it's not just infrastructure. In some respects, I look at, and the thing is, I'm looking at this through like a very sort of very narrow lens in the manner of speaking. Where among the people that I know who I've grown up with, people I've met here or internationally who then go back to Nigeria, the switch that I see in terms of accountability, wanting to do better. Like, for me, I was raised, the strongest person aside in my family was my mother. So when you're raised with that as a lens of how to view women, then when you see some of the madness that's going on, you're like, but wait, do we hate women? So, for instance, one of the things that I asked, because my fourth interview, and the one thing that, in fact, let me just ask this as a question rather than just because it will come up in discussion. So, what, in your opinion, this is me jumping ahead, like, what in your opinion are the strengths you see in Nigerian women and Nigerian men? And what are those differences? I mean, I'd like to kick it off, if you don't mind, because there's something that I specifically want to say. My mother was an incredibly industrious woman. My mother was a head chef for Nigerian Airways, and then she owned supermarket. She owned a supermarket. She owned a commodities store. So she sold like, you know, barrels of oil, you know, like cooking oil, cement, alcoholic beverages, and as we call them, softer drinks, minerals. Nigeria.
Yeah.
And my father was a psychologist and an engineer. And, you know, he worked for, he was a telecommunications engineer, so he worked for Post and Telecommunications in Nigeria. And growing up, I used to look at my dad and be like, well, okay, you're an academic. So is my mother. My mother is also an academic. My mother was also a teacher as well. So like, I'm like, look at this industrious human being. She taught me everything I know about business to date. Like, you know, both my parents, so rest in peace. But they were, for me, the most interesting couple to watch growing up. And then when I looked at other families, like you'd see the father, you are the head of the household, and the mother, who actually was doing better than the father, was like almost like, you know, he's a puppet. Basically, he's a figurehead for society, because you're just trying to keep this dynamic of society. And I always looked around and I used to think there are a lot more powerful women than there are men.
Yes.
They don't.
Yes.
They're not out there like, I'm powerful. What's it called?
Yeah.
Because they're secure in their power, which started to lead me to the conversation about feminism. When you look at the Western narrative of feminism, as in the European narrative of feminism, the Caucasian definition of feminism, I'm like, that's not the same thing that I saw when I was growing up, and I think they're very different. Anyway, sorry. So, what do you see as, you know, what are the strengths you see in Nigerian women and Nigerian men?
For me, it's as you said, like it's the innovative nature. It's the innovative nature of Nigerian people as a whole, that we can literally create something out of nothing. So, you know, man, woman, like that is something that I'm so proud to, you know, be able to call on energetically, you know, from my lineage, knowing that I'm capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And yes, like as you said about feminism and the Western idea of feminism, I feel like the Western idea of feminism again is so violent in its nature, because all it seeks to do is get equal footing. Like Alice Walker said, it just seeks to get equal footing with their fathers and their brothers, right? So let's oppress everybody together. When we look at the transatlantic slave trade, some of the more violent acts that were committed were actually committed by the white women, the white slave masters, the white female slave masters. So there is something that white people generally, when we look at that, look at that dynamic, they don't want to own up to, they don't want to really address about themselves. So it's in vogue now to kind of go, white men, oh, am I right? No, don't talk about white men, am I right? You too, you are there. It's not them. They didn't do all of that by themselves. They could not have done that by themselves.
Exactly.
You had to be complicit in it. And you not only were you complicit in it, sometimes you were at the helm of the violence. So don't now turn around because it wasn't documented in that way, because of patriarchy, because your name wasn't written down as the perpetrator of that violence, that, oh, you're not part of it, because we very much know through your day-to-day attitudes, even today, that you are there, if not more violent. So I refuse to, you know, to take that on. And so with Nigerian women, they were doing feminism before they were naming feminism. And this is why I think like a lot of Nigerian women don't have time for the labels, don't have time for the terms, because like, fam, I've been running the home, I've been working the fields, I've been fighting the wars. Like women went to war, like they had actual, you know, soldier systems, like very, like, that's why I thought like seeing the Dora Milaje and things like that in Black Panther was so interesting, because
rest in peace, Chadwick.
People don't, yes, you know, rest in peace, Chadwick. Like, we don't look at that enough, again, because we've lost a lot of that, those, you know, documentations and artifacts. But women went to war. They didn't just sit down, because sometimes the nurturing is the fighting. Exactly. You know, fighting for what is yours. Yeah. And again, we can't ignore the impact of colonization, which came through and was just like, rah. So your women are just like, running things, and you're just
You're okay
okay
with
with that? No, you have to step on their heads. Step on their heads. Don't have it. Don't let them wear trousers.
Yes.
Don't let them do this. Don't let them do that. They stay in the home. They do this. And so I think that the energy was like, oh, we've really got to do what these white men are saying. But can you keep the power? Can we pretend that, you know, I'm in power and you could just fall back a bit? And so I don't think it's necessarily even a case of Nigerian women being secure in their power, because I think they've actually forgotten the true extent, extent of their power. I think that that's what's happened, and it's hard to call back that which you don't recognize, you know, and it's there as an inherent part because we see it playing out in the day-to-day, and you know, women in government, and we see all of that. But that's just a fraction of the power that Nigerian women have. But when it comes to, you know, they can do the political in certain regards, but when it comes to the personal, when it comes to setting out and living within your personal politics, within your relationship, especially your relationship with men in the household, suddenly the power, you're not using it, you're not executing that power in the same way. And I think that is what I'd like to see more of. And with Nigerian men, there are no other men like them in the world. Like, come and see style, come and see beauty, come and see strength, you know, come and just see intelligence, like craftsmanship, like in terms of musicality, like the way that we move, like it's so beautiful. Like, I would not want to be anything other than Nigerian. Like, I think it's just what we can do, the energy we create, because it's not just about what we produce, but just who we are, the energy that we have is unlike any other. And it's so noticeable in men. Like, who dresses like Nigerian men? Nobody. Like, the style is just on the next level. Like, there's so much to it. When I see the designs that we're even coming up in terms of what to wear, in terms of agbada and things like that, you're just like, no, there's nobody that can touch Nigerian men when it comes to this. And it's interesting because that would then be seen as a more effeminate characteristic to be able to, right? But no, and that goes back to everything, that it's colonization that interrupted the fluidity that we had as people. And that fluidity, we still see it playing out, but it would be so much more beautiful. There'd be so much more power in it if we weren't hung up on what it means to be masculine and what it means to be feminine through the global West's lens.
So, Kelechi, here's the thing. We're 11:41 now. Like, I really should have just tried to do this longer. We might even have to come back and do part 2. But
okay,
just to quickly sort of do a summation, because we don't have to answer all the questions, but I just want to ask you, just in case this thing cuts us off, what is your favorite Nigerian phrase, proverb, or saying?
Definitely, I cannot come and kill myself. I can't come and kill myself. No, never.
Yeah,
that is my favorite. It's a testament to everything, that after you've done all that you can do, I beg,
just relax yourself. It's okay.
Just chill out. You can't come and kill yourself for who and for what?
It's true.
No.
It's true. Okay, the other one is, what is your favorite Nigerian dish?
Oh, this is so hard. But I'm gonna have to say suya.
Woo.
With gari and groundnut, with some ice cubes in there.
Basic but hardcore staple.
Hard hitting.
Yeah.
That is my favorite, like hands down.
Fantastic. And the last question: how do you compare Nigeria in the 60 years that Nigeria had attained? Because some people like to say gained independence. I mean, what did we gain? But attained independence over the last 60 years, in your opinion, because I know you said you're an 80s baby, I'm a 70s baby, early 70s baby, but like, we all have opinions about it because we've grown up in households where these have been conversations. What is your opinion about it? Because I think we've only maybe got 2 minutes left, if that.
Okay. I think that we are still reeling from the extreme violence that was colonization. We're still reeling from that. And any sort of trauma, you need time to process it. 60 years is not enough time to process centuries of abuse, you know, but we're doing so well because the younger generation, the older generation, you know, they set the path and they started cutting away and making way for us in a way that we do need to respect and thank them for. And the younger generation is coming with a ferocity. They're coming with a knowledge of how the colonizer operates, and also understanding their history and lineage, and putting the two together, creating a sort of alchemy that is kind of helping us to improve and to grow exponentially. It's really taken up the momentum of that. And I'm hopeful. I definitely am hopeful. We've got a long way to go, but I know that we can do it.
You know, the funny thing is, with everyone I've spoken to so far, the one common narrative has been hope. There's hope. It's not like we're a complete lost cause.
No.
Like, nobody's a complete lost cause, but the way that, you know, the way that the media, and I mean all forms of media, boya social media, boya TV, television, boya whatever it is, you can see that the narrative that they keep purporting is always one of negativity and loss and hope and hopelessness. Yes, we're actually the actual people who live in all the different worlds, because I've seen there be a change where people are like, yeah, I would definitely go back to Nigeria, maybe not live there all the time, but like, I want to go back and do something. You know, and there are people making serious leaps and bounds just in terms of the mentality. Because the mentality is the first thing that has to change before true change takes hold. You know, if it's pride, we have pride. We have that in overabundance. Can we just remove some of that pride and put it in the mentality to actually make these things take hold? But aside from that, I just really want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
No. Like, thank you for coming. Seriously, because obviously, you know, it's not like, okay, I'm a self-confessed, you know, SYM fan. I will look at that one. I will listen, and anybody that comes, so you know they're coming for me too, because we have to back on me. You know, we'll go and fight them together. But I just keep looking at the change in the mindset of people, because you can't always be looking at things just with a Western mindset. Understanding who you are, where you come from, and how these things motivate you to do better is the best way to move forward. And on that one, I'm going to just say thank you so much for your time.